you bring it in the world. It's not a sport.
I didn't know she had 8 kids.
Knowing who my real dad is.
This could be my kid.
That's what you having a baby with your girlfriend.
I was in love with him. Whether he was in love with me.
Although we love each other, we don't get along. We're like oil and water.
It's not like I'm out here just sleeping around.
I need to know if the baby's mine.
No, not twin, but 2 different women.
Is there anything crueler than bringing 2 men to paternity court and breaking both of their hearts? Mr. Flowers is in court today with his ex, Ms. Diaz, to see if he's the father of her 2-month-old daughter, Callie. Mr. Flowers has bonded with Callie, and she smiles when she sees him, but he still has some doubts that she's his daughter because Ms. Diaz sleeps around. Now, Ms. Diaz says Mr. Flowers' jealousy and insecurity drove her into another man's bed, but is convinced that Callie is his daughter. Of course, the other potential father, Mr. Bowman, is also in court with us today.
I gave her my name, so like Callie, then my last name, Flowers.
You've actually bonded with Callie. You named her?
Man, yes. Every time I walk in the room, she smile. Like, daddy is here. Like, oh, my daddy is here, She smile, like, big smile. She loved me. She really loved me. So it's like, I can't imagine Callie not being mine.
But you have doubt.
Yeah, I have doubt. Everybody gonna have doubt.
Oh, that's a lot. But to Ms. Diaz, all of this doesn't matter. She has absolutely zero doubts that her child belongs to Mr. Flowers.
The doctor confirmed the time of conception was around the time that I had sex with Mr. Flowers. We were the only 2 people together at that time, which was the first week of August, and there could be no other possibility but Mr. Flowers.
So tell me about the nature of this relationship.
Me and Mr. Flowers have an off and on relationship, a very rocky relationship.
Well, that's it then. If there's no other possibility, then we can just get the DNA test results and confirm that Callie indeed belongs to Mr. Flowers, right? But that's not how things work in paternity court. Countless women have come here to say the same thing, and countless of them have been proven to be liars. We need to hear the whole story and see if Ms. Diaz cracks under pressure.
Admitted.
I try my best. I feel like if somebody lied to me the first time, you lost my trust, straight up. And I'm just being honest. I tried to give her a chance after chance after chance, but I feel like I was working too hard and she wasn't putting enough effort in.
And when you say she wasn't putting enough effort, explain that.
You know how you could feel that love is in the air at first, but then again, it's like kind of drifting away because she's talking to another person?
Mr. Flowers said he's given Ms. Diaz all the chances in the world, and she still keeps on cheating on him. He says the other gentleman, Mr. Bowman, is Callie's father, and he has some evidence for that.
Because, let's be honest, she sleep around. So in my head, it's like, do you want me to be there because I'm gonna be there and I'm gonna be the good father? Or are you just gonna use me because you can't find these other dudes to be the father?
So you think she's saying you're the father because you're the steady Eddie?
True story.
That's extremely ruthless if it's the truth. Ms. Diaz looks so kind and innocent. Would she really push a child onto Mr. Flowers because she believes he's a steady Eddie who will always be there?
He says you were sleeping around. Were you? Is that true?
Yes, Your Honor.
It is. And why are you convinced then that Mr. Flowers is your child's biological father if you admittedly were having sex with more than one person?
Well, I was in a rough time in my life at that time. I felt like Mr. Flowers wasn't giving me the support I needed emotionally or financially for us to be able to make a relationship work. I'm sure that he's the father.
Ms. Diaz is sticking to her story for now. It's the regular story we hear in paternity court. She says she knows the period of conception, and he was the only one she slept with at the time. That's sound logic. She even has a calendar to prove her claim. Apparently, she'd slept with Mr. Flowers during the week of conception and slept with Mr. Bowman the very next week. However, she didn't tell her doctor that. Perhaps he would have told her there's a very slight possibility that Mr. Bowman could be the father.
And she's like, I'm pregnant. I'm like, what?
And so when she said this to you, did she say, and you're the father, or you are one of the potential fathers?
She said one of the potential fathers. She came straight with me. Like, she was honest with me with that.
Ms. Diaz, did you also tell Mr. Bowman that he was a potential father?
Yes, Your Honor.
And what was his reaction?
He said, well, if that's the case, we'll get a paternity test.
So she told both men they could be the fathers of her child, but she's in court today saying she's so sure that Mr. Flowers is the father? Well, that may seem odd to you, but that's probably because Ms. Diaz didn't know who the true father was until her doctor told her the week of conception. To be fair to Ms. Diaz, her story is holding up well. No holes so far. Well, that's until this moment when she explains her relationship with Mr. Bowman.
So during the pregnancy, you were with Mr. Bowman.
Me and Mr. Bowman were friends.
And so during the pregnancy, he was around?
Hold up, what? Just friends? Nah, you didn't tell me all that. Y'all was saying, oh, we were this and that. He made me feel good and
Me and Mr. Bowman were never in a official relationship.
But during the pregnancy, you were with him?
Yes, Your Honor.
But then at the birth, Mr. Flowers was there.
She's 100% sure again, but Mr. Flowers has another explanation for why Mr. Bowman wasn't there. He says he wasn't there because he and Ms. Diaz fell off. Ms. Diaz denies this. Anyway, Mr. Bowman is fairly certain that the child doesn't belong to him either.
During the time when the baby was conceived, when me and Miss Mia had sex, I didn't climax.
Oh, well, I walked myself into that, didn't I, Joanne? So this was one occasion that you all had sex without protection.
It was multiple occasions. I can tell you that the first few times when we had sex, right around the time when the baby was presumably conceived, I didn't climax.
Okay. All of this testimony points to the fact that Mr. Flowers is Callie's likely father. If I were a gambling man, that's exactly what I would put my money on. Well, let's see what the DNA test results have to say about that.
Mr. Flowers, you are not the father. Mr. Bowman, you are not the father.
Ms. Stephanie Chimulinski says that her child belongs to the son of the defendant, Georgie. Unfortunately, George died in a motorcycle accident and wasn't able to introduce Stephanie to his family. She says the defendants, Mr. Brown and Mrs. Long, initially accepted Xavier as their grandson, but now they need proof that he's actually related to them. Both parents now say they believe Ms. Stephanie made up a fairy love story with their son because they'd never heard of her from him.
Take me to the day you found out Georgie passed.
I was devastated, heartbroken, confused.
But why? I just making me understand one thing. Why didn't I know about you?
I don't understand why you didn't know about me either.
Okay, that's not an answer.
5-year relationship.
Why don't I know about you?
Never heard of her.
I've never seen you at my house.
Did you ever ask
What a
Georgie
girlfriend.
why you haven't introduced me to your parents?
No, because we were just friends. It was like a sexual friendship.
Wow, that's going to be really hard to believe. So Georgie was sleeping with Ms. Stephanie here for 5 years and his parents never knew about that? What sort of friendship is that even? Does that even happen? Ms. Stephanie says Georgie had a girlfriend, but it didn't matter because she still slept with him. She says their relationship continued no matter who they were with.
Basically, we found out when he actually sent me a picture or a text message when I was talking to him one time, and he sent me a picture and he said, "Dad, what do you think? This could be my kid." And I told him at that time that I really couldn't tell from the picture.
How old was Xavier when you got that text?
A year old, because he came to me also. So I know everyone that he interacted with, okay? I've never seen her before.
Here's what really happened. Georgie supposedly had this child with Ms. Stephanie before he passed, but he either wasn't sure of being the child's father or just didn't want to introduce Stephanie to his family. This meant that Stephanie never met Mrs. Brown until Georgie passed. Years after his death, Mrs. Brown was still being urged by friends and family to find out if Xavier was her grandson, and now she's in paternity court to do just that.
No, she wants to be Georgie.
He and Georgie was doing a home DNA test a couple months before he had passed, and we couldn't come up with the money. So after, I think it was like 5 months, then he had passed away. So then that's when I went to the
You should
funeral.
have came to me then.
How old was Xavier when Georgie died?
He was 2 weeks before he turned 1.
Okay. Did Georgie accept Xavier? Did they have a relationship?
He saw him a couple times.
Well, that's a great question, because it's important to know if Georgie also had any paternity doubts. Did he really think Xavier was his kid? And if he did think so, why didn't he introduce the boy to his family members? What happened?
Georgie died.
He was 2 weeks before he turned 1.
Okay. Did Georgie accept Xavier? Did they have a relationship?
He saw him a couple times. They took pictures together and...
5-year relationship? You only saw him a couple times?
No, with the baby.
Why did he only see the baby a couple times when he was almost a year old?
He wasn't positive if it was his or not.
Well, it turns out even Ms. Stephanie doesn't know if this baby belongs to Georgie for certain.
When the baby was 5 months old, Georgie came to me and called me and said, "Your son has my nose." And I said, "Oh my God,
He came
you are
to you
right."
and said,
he said
that?
"Your son has my nose."
Just out the blue.
Yeah, when the baby was 5-6 months old.
So the truth is you don't know for sure, Ms.
No.
Chimulinski. You really don't?
No.
Okay, so let's just get down to the bottom line.
Just the older
You don't
he gets-
know for sure.
Right.
So
older
you
he
and
gets-
Georgie tried to figure out the timeline.
It turns out there's one other man who could be the father of the baby in question. Unfortunately, the other guy who could be the child's father had been murdered 5 months into Miss Stephanie's pregnancy. So the two guys who could be her child's father have now passed away. The family members of that family didn't reply to Miss Stephanie until Xavier was 2, and when they did, it was to tell her to raise the DNA test fees herself.
I just wanted both of them, both the grandparents, to know, because they both don't have They both lost a child.
We all want to know, but you can't delusion yourself. Georgie was popular. I'm gonna tell you like it is.
Very
Georgie was very popular, and a lot of women wouldn't mind having Georgie's baby. He's not here to defend himself as far as saying, no, you're wrong, you're wrong. How many other women could have said the same thing? It could, you know, so.
Miss Stephanie says she now tells her son Xavier that Georgie is his father. In fact, she shows him Georgie's videos and he calls him dad. She says Georgie told her that even if he wasn't Xavier's father, he would still take care of him, so that's why she does that.
The results were when he was alive that he was gonna be in his life.
Really?
Yes.
Georgie couldn't even take care of himself.
I know, I understand that, and I told you that the day before the funeral.
He wanted it. I can see that he wanted it, but he wasn't gonna just claim it. He was gonna dig.
So you feel like the reason why he said, Mom, who does this baby look like? You felt like it was because he wanted the baby, but he just wanted to be sure.
Mrs. Brown might look all right now, but this is such a traumatic situation for her. The fact that she has to relive the trauma of losing her son is painful, but she does it anyway because she wants to know the truth, and she's correct. Now let's see whether Georgie is truly Xavier's dad, or if Mrs. Brown just relived her pain for nothing.
Yeah. After the fact, after he passed, 2 years passed. I went on with my life, okay? Grieved for 2 years.
That's why I didn't bother you.
Wait a minute, let me finish. And those are the worst 2 years of my life.
0%.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Jones-Henry says that Mr. Jackson dumped her after finding out she was pregnant with her now 35-year-old daughter, Melanie. This is the first time she's seeing Mr. Jackson after he dumped her 35 years ago, and this is also the very first time her daughter, Melanie, is seeing Mr. Jackson. That is, she's not seen her supposed father in 35 years, and today, in paternity court, is the first time they are meeting. Of course, Mr. Jackson denies all of this.
This is my first time ever even seeing him. I've never even seen him up, hugged him or anything, and I called him when I was little and asked him to come and see me, and he told me he would come, and he never came, and that hurts. How could he not want me? I just don't understand why I was a good child, you know. I just don't understand why.
This is obviously a very painful situation, but Mr. Jackson doesn't seem like he cares too much about that. He says he doesn't believe that Melanie is his daughter because her mother, Ms. Jones-Henry, was cheating on him while they were together. Of course, Ms. Jones-Henry denies this with tears in her eyes.
Excuse me, may I address it? It's not true.
She admitted that she's with someone else. I tricked her into admitting that she was with someone else.
So wait a minute, you're saying you tricked her into admitting that?
Yes.
What did you do? Explain to the court.
When she told me that she was pregnant, I knew that I wasn't the father, but I said, you need to go check with that other guy that you were with the last time. She said she didn't know that I was lying about that.
But Ms. Jones-Henry denies all of this again. Her performance is really, really, really convincing. And if you didn't watch Paternity Court a lot, you'd argue that she is definitely telling the truth. But we all know things are not that straightforward when people come in front of Judge Lake, right? Men lie, women, even crying women like Ms. Jones-Henry, lie, but the DNA never lies.
Did you admit you were with someone else, Ms. Jones-Henry?
Yes, it is. It's true.
I've never admitted that I was with anybody else. As for me, I've always told her Clarence was her father. The Clarence was her father, they knew.
That's because I was the only one she could get hold of. The guy that she was supposed to have been with, she couldn't find him. So then she came to me.
Those are huge accusations, but Ms. Jones-Henry immediately dismisses them. She tells the court that Mr. Clarence Jackson was the only man she slept with when Melanie was conceived, and that's that about that.
I met her at the club, yes. I was in the military. I wasn't even 19 yet. I met her. We had a good time. We talked that night that I met her. By the time I got off the phone, she was telling me, I could fall in love with you, which was a red flag to me. Like, oh no, here we go.
So wait a minute, okay, but did you sleep with her after that phone conversation?
After the phone conversation, yes, we were together for a while.
Of course, it wasn't that bright. People only see red flags when they come to paternity court. Outside paternity court, all flags are green, baby. A few months later, Ms. Jones-Henry found out she was pregnant, and Mr. Jackson says he immediately knew she was lying. He then said he thought she wanted to trap a military man with a baby, but Ms. Jones-Henry says she truly loved him and even spoke with his mother.
And you went off to serve?
I was in the Marine Corps. I went off to, my duty station changed. It wasn't that I left. I had to leave. That was the end of my time at that.
Exactly, and we thank you for your certificate of live birth for Melanie Jones. And I see mother signature. I see mother's
Since Mr. Jackson wasn't around for the birth of the child, he didn't sign the birth certificate. Unfortunately for Mr. Jackson, a default judgment was entered against him because he didn't respond to a court letter about paying child support. This made him sign up for dependent support in the military, which means he had to admit that Melanie was his child. He then signed the affidavit saying that he was indeed Melanie's father. Of course, Mr. Jackson says he didn't mean this.
But
No, she
$35 a check.
She's my child. I've been here. I stood with her. I was there when she cried. I was there when she asked for you. I was there when she wanted you, and you didn't want to be with her.
And so, Mr. Jackson, you just said something in open court right now. You just said in court, she was your meal ticket. Do you believe that Ms. Jones-Henry was just trying to set you up to be the father because you were this military man?
I believe so.
So Mr. Jackson says that Ms. Jones-Henry was a complete gold digger. Despite all of this, Ms. Jones-Henry sticks to her story. She has no doubts that her daughter belongs to Mr. Jackson, and she says there were no other men she slept with either.
So you're saying you never had any doubts because there were no other men?
I never had any doubts.
But were there any other men?
No.
That's a two-part question.
No, there were no other men. I don't know what he's talking about what he told me. There was no other men. She can attest to, even to this day, I had great thoughts of him. I never had anything negative thoughts of him because I still, to this day, felt that way.
Well, if you insist, Ms. Jones-Henry, let's see whether the DNA test agrees with you. If it turns out Ms. Jones-Henry has been lying all this while, it means she's told her daughter a complete and total lie about who her father could be for 35 whole years. There's nothing more ruthless than that.
Mr. Jackson, you are not the father.
Really? I didn't have anybody else.
He is not the father.
I did not.
You point all that blame on me, and you put your daughter through all that for nothing.
Ms. Thomas says that she met the defendant, Mr. McKee, online, and they soon moved their conversation to the bed. She's in court today to prove that her son Carson belongs to Mr. McKee. Mr. McKee, on the other hand, says Carson cannot be his son because Mr. McKee and Ms. Thomas are black, while Carson is white.
First of all, we met on a dating website, as you spoke. We started off talking, and then once we started knowing each other, who we were.
How long did you talk on the phone?
Maybe about a month or two.
Okay.
And then I started going to see him, maybe like a 45-minute drive from where I live, like every other day. So I'm assuming, like, I'm spending the night, staying the night with him, things like that. So I'm assuming I'm...
And you're having a good time, getting to know one another.
It turns out that driving 45 minutes to a man's house and sleeping with them without protection doesn't guarantee a relationship. Mr. McKee and Ms. Thomas might have been sleeping together, but Mr. McKee didn't turn that into an actual relationship.
Not really, Your Honor, but...
Did you all ever discuss being in a relationship?
No, ma'am.
Oh, you didn't?
No, ma'am.
So what was it about her you were attracted to?
That picture she had online.
Okay, so you liked what you saw.
Yes, ma'am.
And so as you were dating, you just didn't feel like you were at that point ready to have a commitment.
Well, that sucks. It sucks even more that sometimes Ms. Thomas would put her kids to bed, drive 45 minutes to see Mr. McKee, wake up early, and drive 45 minutes back home before they woke up. That sounds like it should be illegal or something, shouldn't it?
But she called me when she was like 3 months pregnant. I know I got a phone call, I was at work, and I told her I'd call her back, but I ended up blocking her number.
What?
He blocked it after we had that conversation. After we had that
Really?
conversation,
After I blocked the number, she had the baby and called me from another number.
So she called to tell you she was pregnant and you just said okay and then blocked her number?
Yes, ma'am, Your Honor.
That's so cruel. And the way he confesses to behaving like this so nonchalantly is insane. Mr. McKee sounds like a real piece of work. Even if the child ends up not being his, the fact that he could treat a potential mother of his kid this way is horrifying. And he has absolutely no remorse either. At this point, you start to kind of hope that he isn't Carson's father.
I haven't heard from her, Your Honor.
All while she was pregnant?
All while she was pregnant.
So you weren't there when the baby was born?
No, Your Honor.
So after the baby was born, you tried back again with this new number?
Again, like a week later with a new number. And then he answered. And I told him I just had my baby. He still couldn't like really believe me. He was like, send me some pictures. He was at work then. He's like, send me some pictures. So I sent him some pictures. And he's like, that's my baby. Are you sure that's my baby? And then he looked at the color of it, like why he's the color he is.
I don't know about you, but I think even if the baby looked just like Mr. McKee, mustache and all, he still would have denied him.
Like, this not my baby, Your Honor. I'm like, damn, this baby make number 8 right here. Like,
number 8 for who? You or her?
For me.
For her.
I have 8. That'd be number 8.
So,
number 8?
So I'm kind of confused.
Whoa. So did you know she had children when you were dating her?
Yeah, he know I have kids.
I didn't know she had 8 kids, Judge.
Wow, Ms. Thomas has been hard at work. She's really been working at making these babies and delivering them. That really puts a whole new twist on her, putting all 7 of her children to bed and then driving 45 minutes to see Mr. McKee and then driving back. This is insane.
Not just because of the skin color, but you felt that the features and even the characteristics of the baby were of a child you believe to be biracial. Okay, because you know in this courtroom, we don't play around judging kids by their skin color.
You're right.
But I'm trying to understand when you say it looked like it could be, I understand what you're saying.
Well, Mr. McKee does have a point. That baby does look biracial. Maybe Mr. McKee is also secretly biracial, or maybe Ms. Thomas is secretly biracial. Anyway, that's why Mr. McKee says that he isn't Carson's father.
It's a happen in a month.
Wait a minute, explain that.
I meet you April the 1st, and April the 20th, we getting it in. It ain't gonna take long.
Oh, you're saying it's because she had sex with you so quickly that you felt like, well, maybe this is the type of person or type of woman who's also having sex with other people.
But when we first started off, we was using protection.
Mr. McKee says that it only took him 2 weeks to get Ms. Thomas to sleep with him, and that's another reason why he thinks she's entertaining other men. But Ms. Thomas denies all of this and shares the heartbreaking story of hiding her pregnancy from her family members.
You did?
For my whole family, because I didn't want to have another child without their dad.
So the entire 9 months you went without the support?
When I went into labor, my family was like, what? You in the hospital having what? I said, I'm in the hospital having my baby.
And you had no idea, Mr. McKee?
Oh man, I didn't know she was having a baby, Your Honor. But look at that baby.
He looks just like you, just a different color.
Well, there's only one way to find who's saying the truth here, and that way is to get the paternity test results. But before we get to that, there's one more question Mr. McKee is yet to answer.
So do you have any other kids, Mr. McKee?
I have a daughter.
You do? And so this would be your first son?
I have 2 more on the way.
You have 2 more kids on the way right now?
Yes, ma'am, Your Honor.
Right.
With your spouse or your girlfriend?
Girlfriend.
Okay, so the children were planned? No. Okay.
You talk about me?
So you have twins on the way?
And get this. Not only are they 2 different women, they are 2 sisters, and they are having their babies about a month apart. This means Mr. McKee can end up right here in paternity court again. That's incredible, really. What a story. Anyway, here are the DNA test results.
Mr. McKee, you are not the father.
Are you serious?
He is not the father, Miss Thomas.
I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm sorry.